All right, so welcome to day 7 of our webmaster class. We are in module 2, and module 2 covers the concept of web hosting. Today is the last day for module 2, and today we want to build a simple web page and put it on our web hosting service. It is very important to understand that for over 3 decades now, companies providing web hosting services have been the reason we are able to go online. Right now, millions of new gadgets, devices, and things are connecting to the internet every day. More devices now than there are people. Think about that. Think about the data centers they provide and the thousands of web servers that fill each one of them. These web servers are super powerful computers that connect to other data centers and web servers across the globe. When people think that they are surfing the internet, they are actually exchanging messages with one of these web servers. These web servers form the cloud. They carry all the websites and multimedia files in the world. They provide us with file servers, database servers, email servers, and offer 99.9% uptime guarantee with 0% downtime, all setting the platform for the professionals we call webmasters. For so many years now, we have been putting websites online through web servers that are provided by web hosting companies. Today, top companies have emerged as cloud leaders who are providing these same service at an advanced level. And so, moving forward, cloud hosting will become more and more popular. And with the cloud hosting, you have the architecture of a clustered hosting. Today in the afternoon class, you saw how you can easily set up an instance on cloud and it can host your website for you. All right. So this method of hosting websites with AWS and other cloud providers, it is becoming more and more modern. But then these companies that provide web hosting services have been there for decades, and they put all the websites we use online. And so we've looked at the various types of hosting, and we have covered the different ways that web servers are configured. We've seen shared hosting, reseller hosting, dedicated VPS, and all of these things. And we've also talked about cloud hosting. Today, what we are going to do is to use the hosting that we have created and put up websites online. You need to believe that you can. And if you can believe that, you are halfway there. Having the ability to, having the belief that you can achieve it, having the belief that you can learn and understand these things helps you to get there halfway. And with a little training, you can make it. Today is going to be a wonderful class. And today we are going to cover the last lesson in the module 2. And it's all about creating websites with HTML. HTML is a super powerful language, and it is the mother language of all web pages and all websites and everything that appears online. It is very essential that every tech professional understands how HTML works and how web servers work. This cuts across everything we will do in tech. So, although this is not a web designing class, we will explore the language of HTML in a very basic way so that we can just create a simple page to put on our web hosting accounts. Later, when we get to web design, we will actually create professional looking websites. To move on, I'm going to play a very short clip. And after this clip, we'll start writing some code in HTML. So I'm going to share my VLC, and we'll just watch one clip and then we'll delve into writing code with HTML.
Hi, my name is Natalie, and I'm one of the people you talk to when you call us here at Bluehost. Nowadays, most of us use the internet all the time, but lots of us still don't really know how it works. Well, knowing how websites work makes getting online a lot easier. So in this video, we go over the basics of what websites are made of, where websites are stored, and how websites get from where they are to your computer. So first off, websites are really not that complicated. It's true, good websites can take a lot of time, money, and talent to create, but at the end of the day, every website out there is just a bunch of files just like you have on your computer at home. Websites are made of content like pictures, graphics, music, movies, text, and so on. But there is one part that's unique. All websites include computer code written in a programming language called HTML. If you aren't familiar with programming, this code may not look pretty, but the web browser on your computer loves it. See, your browser is designed to use this code to stitch all those files together into a website you can see on your screen. So think of these files as pieces of a puzzle and think of the code like instructions on how to solve it. Now, all these files and the code need a place to be stored. After all, just like music or pictures on your computer at home, website files take up space. Well, that's where this comes in. This is a web hosting server. Well, it's an old one anyway that we used to use here at Bluehost. It may not look like it, but servers like these are just super powerful computers. They look a little different than what most of us have at home. There's no mouse or keyboard, and there's no display. But that's because these computers have just one purpose, and that is to serve as a place for websites to be stored and accessed. So these computers are called servers not so much because of what they are, but more because of what they do: serve data. They just have a lot of extra hard drives and processors and take a lot more power to run. And they're flat. That's so we can stack them. Here at Bluehost, we have more than 1,000 of these in our data center. Now lastly, how do websites stored on these servers get to your computer at home? Well, when you look up a website, you open up a browser, type in the website or domain name, and press enter, right? Well, after that, behind the scenes, your computer goes online to find the server where that particular website is stored by using what's called the domain name system, or DNS. See, a server, just like a building, has an address. The DNS maintains a list of which websites are on which servers and then tells your computer where they are. So think of a DNS as like a phone book for websites. Once your computer finds the server, it connects, gets the files and HTML code, and then your browser puts it all together into a website that you can see and use. So that's it. I hope this helps explain a little bit about how websites work. This was just a very basic overview, so if you want to learn more, don't worry. We're doing several more in-depth videos soon. Just make sure to follow us so you don't miss them.
All right. Now, websites are applications that require a lot of IT infrastructure to be able to display to the world. All the IT infrastructure is handled by the web hosting company. And so there are machines that keep the website online. These machines are the web servers. These web servers are in physical data centers, and they are real machines managed by IT experts. These machines are connected to each other and they have incredible connections that put them online 24 hours a day. These machines are housed in data centers where there are thousands of web servers in these data centers. And so companies like these have taken care of the infrastructure part of the website you are about to build. And so the last layer that is required is the application that you will put on top of it. And so your job is to just take care of their application and let the web hosting company take care of the infrastructure and the IT. This is the same concept of cloud computing. With cloud computing, another company takes care of all the technical aspects, all the IT, all the servers, the networking, the data centers, the connection. They take care of all of that. Your job is to take care of either the application alone or even get a service that already has an application. And so if you check the concept of cloud computing, you will see that we are handling the model where the IT has been taken care of, and we are taking care of the platform. So this is like a platform as a service model. When you check the models of cloud computing, you are going to discover that there are several models. There are several models. And so if you are using an on-premise model, what it means is that you take care of everything, right from networking to storage, the servers, the virtual machines, the operating system, middleware, runtime, data, and application. This is a lot to handle on your own. And so these cloud companies have come in to provide certain types of solutions. So one model is infrastructure as a service. With this model, they take care of the networking, the storage, the servers, the virtualization. Then you take care of the operating system to the application. With a platform as a service, they take care of the networking, the storage, the servers, virtualization, operating system, middleware, runtime. Then you take care of your data and your application. So with the job that we are going to do now, all of these things have been taken care of for us. All we have to do is to use our web designing skills to take care of the data and the application. So today, our job is to build an application and put it on this IT technology here. Once you set up a hosting account and you connect your domain name to it, all of these things are done for you. So we are going to learn how to build our application. There is a model called software as a service that comes with an application already on top of it. So you just use the application. For example, if you are using Gmail, Gmail is the application you are using. And Gmail has all the IT behind it as well. So once you subscribe to it, or let's say you are using a professional one like Microsoft 365, you just pay for the application and you use it and everything is taken care of for you. Your entire organization can be on Microsoft 365 and you don't need to worry about anything. With this, we are going to use our knowledge and we are going to build an application. So what we are going to build right now will be working with a language called HTML. If you can hear me and if you are here with me, please put HTML in the chat for me. HTML. Put it in the chat for me. HTML is a language. And who can tell me what HTML stands for? What does HTML stand for? I can see someone typing. But before we look at that, I'm going to tell you what I would do when I want to build a website. Now, websites are just made up of files. We just heard it in the video. They are just made up of what? Files. Now, these files are organized. So the first thing you need to understand is that before you build a website, you need to organize your files. Because if the files are disorganized, they can't go onto the server. And so you need to make sure the files are organized. If the files are disorganized, they may show on your PC where you are building the application. But when you put it online, they cannot show because they cannot connect to all the files that are disorganized. Because if you pull one from your documents and one from your downloads and one from your images, on the server, there's nothing like documents, downloads, images. And so all your files need to come to one place. So it is advisable and it is recommended and it is mandated that anytime you are building an application or a website on your machine, you create something called a local host. That local host will be like a server only on your machine. To create your local host, it is just a matter of creating a folder to keep all your files. By creating a folder to keep all your files, we call that folder your local host. And so on my machine that I use to build websites, I have a folder called www where all my projects will be in. It is important to have a place where all your projects are stored. And anytime you want to create a new project, all you have to do is to create a new directory to host that project. And so we want to create a simple website for a company. So you look for the name of the company or the name of the project you are working on, and then you type it here in lowercase, all right? A time will come, you'll learn HTML and CSS at a more professional level. This one is just a simple overview of everything. So let's say I'm building a fashion website. So let's say the company is called, um, the company is called, let's just call it, let's just call it Fashion Sense, okay? That's the name of the company. So I create a folder called Fashion Sense. One thing you'll notice here is that I created my folder in lowercase. Most of the time when we are building web applications, designing websites, there is a naming convention that we use. Our naming convention applies to how we create our directories, meaning our folders, and how we create our file names. The first rule is that there shouldn't be any space within your file names or folder names. Because once everything goes online, we are talking about linking things and using hyperlinks. And so because of the idea of creating links, if your file names are broken or are separated, the links can break. And sometimes we try to fill in broken links, but it is not advisable to create any file name or folder name with space. You either join them together or use hyphen to separate them. Using hyphen is important because hyphen can allow the name to be recognized in search engines. If you use underscore, underscore will prevent it from being readable because this, for me as a human, I can read it, but the computer may not be able to read and understand this. However, when you use hyphen, hyphen will separate each of them and make them readable. All right. Let's call the company Fashion Sense. Let's assume the website is fashionsense.com and we want to create it. And I wish anybody here had their domain name created because in yesterday's class, we set up web hosting. And if anybody just registered their name and they've pointed it to the server, we could have moved the files to that server. Nonetheless, by tomorrow, I believe all these accounts will be ready and these files will be put online easily. I'll also put it online for you to see. And by tomorrow, the DNS propagation would have been completed. All right. So I've told you about the naming convention for web designing and web applications. We use lowercase. We don't use spaces. That is very important to know. And I've created a folder for my project. When I open to this folder, this is where I'm going to begin my project. Because of organizing my files, I am going to ensure that all my images are stored in a folder called images. This is required. Your images should not be scattered together with your files. Your images should move into its own folder called images. If you are going to use CSS, you should have a folder called CSS. This folder should store all your style sheets or all your CSS. If you are going to be using JavaScript, you can create a folder called JS and all your scripts should live in this folder. Then over here, your website files should appear over here. Because I'm going to create this in a very basic way, I'm not going to use any professional tool to make it easy. I just want everything to be raw so that we see how it works. And so I'm going to create my first web page. And web pages are just files. Please put that in the chat. Web pages are just files. Web pages are just files. Web pages are just files. Let me see someone put that in the chat for me. Web pages are just files. Web pages are just files. Thank you. Now, web pages are files that have a very specific extension. We know that every file should have an extension. A folder doesn't need an extension, but a file needs an extension. If a file has an extension .txt, then we call this a text document. When you check here, you see that it is a text document. When a file has an extension .docs, we call it a Microsoft Word document. If a file has an extension .mp3, we call it an audio file. Web pages are files that have extensions in HTML. Let me delete this and convert this text document to HTML. I'll delete it and recreate it. To create my first HTML file, I'm going to begin by creating a simple text document here. This text document, I am going to convert it into an HTML file. This is exactly how we create it. If you are using a professional tool, you still create a text document that you save in HTML. All right. Now, anytime you are creating your HTML should have the name of the page that you want to create. So if I'm creating a page for projects, I'll just call it projects, and I work on the extension. And so when the website is created, on the home page, I will create a link to projects. And when you click on it, it will go and open the project web page and display the content of the project web page. If I want to create a page for the About Us page, I'll call it About Us. And on the home page, I'll create a link to the About Us page. If I want to create a page for the Contact Us, I will create it. I'll call the file Contact Us. And on the home page, I'll create a link to the Contact Us file. But what if you want to create the home page itself? If you want to create a home page, we don't call it home page. If you want to create a home page, the home page has a reserved name. Please put that in the chat for me. Reserved name. If you don't use that reserved name, your server will not locate your home page. And if you have ever visited a website without a home page file, maybe you've never seen it before because every website works before you visit it. But after we create this and it starts working on the server, we will remove the homepage file and you see how a website looks like without a homepage file. The reserved name for homepage files is index. If you type index, index will become the name that the server will recognize to load first. All right. Right now, I've named it index, but it is still a text document. It is still not a web page. The reason is that .txt defines the name of the file or defines the file, and .txt makes it a text document. Sometimes on your computer, your extensions may not be showing, and I'm doing this to let you understand this because there are some people who are going to have this issue when they start creating their web pages. Now, what I'm doing now, everyone is going to do it. So please pay attention. That is part of what we are supposed to do. You're supposed to do this and put it online for us to see. When you come to file name extensions, you realize that mine is on. That is why I'm able to see extensions, but yours may be off. If yours is off, you are going to see your file names like this. And in your entire computer, extensions are going to be hidden. If you check here, you see that this is still a text document with no extension. If you want to create a web page, or if you want to work in build a web application, as for web people, we always need to see the extension because the extension mean a lot to whatever we are creating. And so you have to ensure that your extensions are enabled. So you can go to view up here, go to show, and you can show your extensions. If you cannot find this, the extensions can be seen in the control panel. So open to the run box by pressing Windows R, then type control over here, enter to open the control panel. In the control panel, we have what is called the File Explorer option. If you are using an older version of Windows, you see folder options. When you click on this, you'll be able to go to View and see whether extensions are hidden. I can see that it is checked, meaning extensions are hidden. So if I want extensions to show, I'll remove it from here and I'll apply. Once I remove it, it means extensions are no longer hidden. When I click this and I close, I'm going to see that extensions are now showing. So right now, I'll be able to convert this to an HTML file. To do that, I will right-click and rename it again. I will rename it again and change the .txt alone to HTML. By the time you do this, you have converted it from an index file, from a text document to an HTML document. Please watch this. When I hit enter, it's telling me that if you change the file name extension, the file might become unusable. This is very, very true when you change the file extension because changing the extension changes the essence of the file. Changing the extension changes the essence of the file. In this case, we know why we are changing it. And the moment I say yes, it now becomes an HTML document. If you look here, you can see that it has taken the icon of a web page. Now it is a web page. So I've been able to create my first web page file. This web page file is what is going to be my home page, and this is where I'll have my HTML code created. I'm going to delete this and create it again. To create your first web page, first off, create these folders down. We have nothing in them, but we'll be storing the resources we'll be using in them. When it comes to creating your web page file, you'll be creating a file for all the pages because a website is made up of several web pages. Right now, we are creating our home page, so we are going to call it index.html. To do this, I'll right-click anywhere in an empty space, go to New, and I'll just choose a text document. This text document, I'll be sure to I have to make sure the extensions are showing. So when it comes to the file name, I'll call it index. Then I'll move over to the extension section and I'll change this to HTML. This should be very clear for everyone who has seen what I just did. When you hit enter, it will ask you whether you are sure you want to change. Should I select yes or no? Who can tell me what to do? Should I select yes or no? Yes or no? If I select no, it will go back to a text document. But if I say yes, it will immediately change to an HTML document. And it will pick the icon of a web page. Now, this HTML document is a very powerful document that contains HTML code. When you visit a website, the first thing the server does is to fetch you the index file. What is that index file? The index file, listen to me, contains instructions on how the page should be organized. We learned that the website is made up of files. And as we are going to create website, you'll see that we are going to put a lot of small files together to create a web page. And we will write HTML as instructions on how to put them together. Just like the video you watched, the HTML code is like instructions to solve the puzzle. And so when the server gives you this file, that file contains that code that will come to your browser, and your browser will listen to that file. It will read it from top to bottom and follow the file to organize the pieces of other files and text and whatever the page contains, and organize it into a beautiful file that you can use or see as a front end that looks professionally designed. This is very important. And so once the server issues this file contains all the instructions. So the web developer or the front-end developer or the web software engineer write the code into this file, and this file builds the page for you. Now, it is having the icon of a browser, meaning it's a web page. When I double click on it, it is going to open in a browser. Let me separate it here, and we are going to see it here. On the title, you are going to see that it has the file name, and there's nothing here. This is supposed to be a beautiful website, but at the moment, it has nothing. At the moment, it has nothing because no code has been written. It has no instructions. The instruction is actually given to the web browser, and the web browser follows the instruction to set up the page. Right now, we are not loading the file from a server. We are loading the file right from our own computer. And so whatever code we have, we are supposed to see right here. Since we have no code, nothing is showing. And so we are going to write some code. The code we are going to write is supposed to be in the language HTML. And so what I'm going to do now is to write code in HTML. Anytime you want to write code in HTML, anytime you want to build a website, your website, listen to me, needs a coding environment and a texting environment. Which environment do we use to text? We use web browsers to text. I've already mentioned that. And so when you open it, you see it in a browser. Which environment do we use to write code? We have several code editors. One of the popular ones is Visual Studio Code. With VS Code, you can write all your code. We have so many other code editors out there that you can use to write your code. However, to make everything very simple, I'm going to write my code in Notepad. And so I just right-clicked and I opened it with Notepad. By opening it with Notepad, the index file has opened here, and I can write something here. Notepad is a plain text editor that allows you to write plain text. Any editor that allows you to write plain text can be used to write code in any language. You can use Notepad to write code in Python, in Java, in C++, or any language because Notepad is a plain text editor. It saves exactly what you write. So when we learn about binary, we came to Notepad, we entered a single file, and we saw that it occupied exactly, we entered a single letter, and we saw that it occupied exactly 1 byte. So whatever you put in Notepad, that is what you get. And so Notepad is a tool that can be used to write code in any language. So I'm going to write code in HTML using Notepad. Let me close this and open it again in Notepad. Remember, if you want to test it, you open it in a browser. If you want to write code, then you open with a code editor. I've not installed any code editor on this machine. I'm just going to write in simple Notepad. I can right click, go to open with, and open it with Notepad. Or if I have Notepad already opened, I can simply drag the file and drop it on Notepad, and it will open. In Notepad, I can write something. So I'm going to start my HTML over here. To write HTML, you need to understand that this language uses elements. It uses what? Elements. Please type elements in the chat for me. Please type elements in the chat for me. Type elements in the chat for me. Please type elements in the chat for me. So whenever you are asked, what is HTML? Now, this language looks so familiar that anytime you see it, you are going to see things like brackets, this angle bracket, you are going to see them a lot. And this language, even though it's very simple, it is super powerful. When we talk about the web, when the web was created, HTML is the mother language of the web. It stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is a standard language for creating web pages. Ever since the web was created, HTML is the language for websites. No matter which framework, no matter which other language supports your website or your web application, it still needs HTML to render in a browser. HTML describes the structure of the web page by receiving instructions in code to organize the page for you. HTML consists of a series of elements. That is why I asked you to type elements in the chat for me. And so to learn about HTML, you just need to know a number of elements. And it's very easy to learn them because we use them repeatedly. And it is very easy. HTML is one of the easiest languages that you'll be used to once you understand how it works. The elements tell the browser how to display the content. Again, this code you write talks to your browser. Talks to your browser. So when you visit the website, the server will send the file to your browser and your browser will organize the page for you. HTML is the foundation of web development, and understanding it is essential for anyone looking to create websites or web applications. Anyone who will ever create websites or web applications or do anything on the web, deploy anything to the web, you need HTML. When you want to write your HTML code, the first element you write is the HTML element. In this particular language, we use angle brackets to define our elements. So what I have here is an element that is called HTML. This is the name. You don't have to ask why it is this or what it is this. What is this? It is the name of the element. It is called HTML. This HTML element is the first element that we create for all HTML codes. And every other code must live within this HTML element. All you have to do is to write it and surround it with these angle brackets. Remember, this is not Python programming. This is a new programming language called HTML, and this is how we handle it. The second thing you need to understand about HTML language is that any element you open, you have to close it. What I have typed here is an instruction to open the HTML element. I need to write another instruction to close it. This is how we close an element. So the first thing you've learned about HTML is that when you open an element, you close it. And this HTML element is a required element for all web pages. So every web page you visit, the first line will have the HTML element, and the last line will have the closing of HTML, and every other code that will make up the web page will live between these two. Sometimes we put the doc type on top to tell the browser that the code you're about to read is HTML5. So sometimes we write doc type over here to tell the browser that we are going to write in HTML5. I don't want to talk about that now. Later on, when you are learning HTML, you'll be introduced to all of this. This is the first element. Now, this particular element requires a structure, okay? All that I have said, I've said a lot of things, but all you need to know is to remember to type this. Typing this is very easy, and typing this is also easy. The structure that it requires two sections. I'm going to give you two sections. And later in HTML version 5 or HTML5, you realize that when you get to the body section, you can also use HTML to create other sections within the body. But then the main sections that the HTML requires forms the structure of every web page. First, it needs a head section. So I have opened the head section with this element. Who can give me code to close this head section? Who can know how to close this head section by what we have learned so far? How do we close this head section? Thank you, Manuel. This means that anytime you open an element, you need to close it. Now, we call these things elements. You can also call them tags. You can say tags or elements. It's more professional to call it elements, but you can also refer to it as a tag. Now, what I have done here, I have created a section in my web page that should contain the head section. Very soon, I'm going to talk about the head section. Before I do that, let me tell you about the body section. And this body section, remember, you close it. This is how you close the body section. So I have created a mother HTML element. Within the mother HTML element, I've created a head section and I've created a body section. What you are looking at is the structure of all web pages. If you want to create a web page, you don't need anybody to tell you what code to write. This is the first code you write because this is the first instruction your browser needs. This code tells your browser that we are writing in HTML. If you add a doc type, it means HTML5. And over here is a section that will also contain code. And over here, we have a section that will also contain code. I believe this is not easy. It's not difficult to understand. And it is something that you can remember easily. Now, the head section is a section that loads all other scripts or contains metadata or instructions that the web page needs to know before the body loads. And so there are a lot of instructions we put here. If you want to load a JavaScript into the web page, we put it in the head section. If you want SEO to find this web page, we put that instruction in the head section. The information that will display on Google when Google finds this web page, we put them in the head section. So the head section is a very important section where we write metadata and sensitive details that will define what the page is about to look like or what should happen on the page. Explain it later on. Later, when you learn HTML, you understand it. Now, the body is a page itself. So whatever displays on the page that is visible should live in the body section. In the head section, I'm going to start writing code in the head section. Before I do, I'm going to save what I've done, and I'm going to check in the browser whether something is showing in the browser. Because this is your coding environment, the browser is your testing environment. The code we have written here forms the structure of your web page, and the browser here should display whatever code you have written. Before you can see whatever you have written, you need to save the code that you typed. If you don't save the code that you created and you come here, you are not going to see anything. When you come here you need to refresh to be able to see any changes in code. Now, the code we have written so far does not contain any instruction to display anything, so nothing is supposed to show. However, this code is required to create structure for the web page. The first code I'm going to write in the head section. And this code, I'm going to use an element called the title element. This title element is a very important element that is able to create a title for the web page. With what you have learned so far, who can tell me how to close the title element? How can I close the title element? Just put it in the chat if you know how to close it. And one rule you have learned so far is that almost any element you open, you have to close. There are just a few elements that we don't close. Those elements are unique, and I'll be showing you some of them. By calling this element, the browser understands this element as an element that will put a title on the web page. So here, I'm going to type something that will appear on the front end for the user to see on the title. So I'm going to say, welcome to Fashion Sense. Welcome to Fashion Sense. Or welcome to my first website. All right. Welcome to my first website. So if this is your first website, you can write welcome to my first website, or you can write hello world, because every programmer writes hello world for their first project. All right. Now, what we have done here, before it will work, we need to remember to save it. Now we'll go to the browser, and I'm going to refresh this. The moment I refresh this, you will see that something has appeared on the title. This means that your browser has received an instruction to display something on the title. Listen, every website has something on the title. If I come here and I open to facebook.com, facebook.com has something on the title. If you go and study the code they use to create the title, it is the same code we wrote to create our title. Exactly the same, because this is HTML. We've not gotten to the body yet. The body should have something on the page. When we get to the body, something will display on the page. But since we are in the head loads before the main page. Inside the head, you can connect to scripts like JavaScript. You can connect to very, very interesting things that will be used or will happen on the page. Right now, I'm seeing that Facebook has an image here, but we don't have some. Should we create some over here? Should we create the image over here? I'm just asking you. If you want us to create this image here, this image, we usually call it favicon. We spell it Favicon, favicon. And you have to understand that the favicon is an image. And as an image, the image needs to already exist or needs to be created. This means that if you want to specialize in this field, you need to add a little bit of graphic designing to your skills. And so every front-end engineer or front-end developer has some graphic skills. Every full stack developer has some graphic skills because sometimes we create graphics and add the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code to display or to create the web pages. When we create the pages, we make them beautiful and attractive for the whole world to see. So I'm not going to create an image right now. I'm going to take an image that already exists and use it. So I'm going to look for this particular image. I have an image already stored somewhere. I'm going to find it. So over here, my mouse is refusing to display. I have an image stored here, and there are 3 images here that we'll be using for this project. These 3 images, let me just copy them, Control C, and come to our project folder and drop them. Look at where I have dropped these 3 images. You see that immediately it makes your folder disorganized. This is my local host. It makes it disorganized. By the time you are done creating a full website, you would have used more than 20 images. Imagine all the images are scattered here. You realize that it's going to make your files look very, very disorganized. And so who can tell me where to put these images I have brought here? Who can tell me where to put them? It is very important to organize your files because all images should be moved to the images folder. So what I'm going to do is to drag them and put them in the images folder to keep this first folder here clean. All images should reside in an images folder. All CSS should reside in a CSS folder. All JavaScript should be in JavaScript folder to keep your page and your files organized. Now that I have my images here, let me open here and check the file name of the image I'm going to use for my favicon. Over here, I've created an image here that already exists, and the file name is favicon.png. Your favicon can be an icon in extension.ico. It can be a PNG. I like PNG because PNG allows you to create transparency. With ICO, you can also create transparency with ICO. That is icon. You can also use JPEG and it will load just fine. However, if you use JPEG, the borders are going to be filled with white background. But if you want the image to appear just as it did in Facebook, you realize that Facebook didn't have white around it. If you look up here, you can see that the Facebook logo is clean. There's no white box around it. If you use a JPEG file, you are going to see a white box around it. All right. So since I have my favicon.png, PNG will also create the same effect. So I'm going to give that instruction to my HTML to load that file. Now, there is a special element we call link that we use to load that file. Link can also be used to load CSS into your project, or other files can be linked to your project using this link element. With this link element, because this particular link element does not open and close like this is one of the elements that you can use without closing it in HTML5. Already this time HTML is in HTML5, and so when you write code, you write it in HTML5. Later, we will learn about one script you can put on top here to tell your browser to treat everything as HTML5. If you use an element like this, that doesn't require you to put anything in between. Notice that this element has something in between. This element has something in between. This element has something in between. But this element, we are not going to put anything in between, so we are going to give it attributes or properties. So one attribute we'll give it is called rel, and we'll give the attribute a value. Another attribute we are going to give is called href, and we'll give it a value. Href is a common attribute when it comes to writing HTML. It stands for hypertext reference, and it is used to link to the destination. So this particular element we are using is also called link, but I need to tell it where to find what I want to link. Where can I find what I want to link? First off, I'll find it in my images folder. When you're writing code or when you're writing the location of something and there's a directory, you need to use this slash here to indicate that what you type here is a directory. So open to the images directory, and who can remember the file name of the image we want to load? What is the file name of the image we want to load? Just put it in the chat if you remember the file name. I showed you. It's called favicon.png. So you need to type it exactly because it will go and search for it. It will go to this images folder to go and look for this file. If the file name is wrong, it will not find it. If the file name is right, it will find it. The relation here talks about is a special attribute for the link element that allows you to tell the link element what you are dealing with, okay? Or what type of elements or what type of resource you want to link to. So the relation here, we are going to use icon over here. And by typing this, we have provided the attributes that the link element needs. This is a simple code that when you start using it over and over, you'll become very used to it. Because every website uses the same line of code. The only thing will be where you are storing your file and the file name. Most people store in images folder. Every website stores in images folder, and most websites stores as favicon. The extension could be .ico because it is an icon, or a PNG can also be used. When I'm done with this, I'll just go ahead and save it. Remember, if you don't save your code, it will not display in the browser. Now that I have saved it, when I come to the browser, someone may expect it to show, but it is not going to show until you do something. What exactly should we do before it shows? Who can tell me? Anytime you write code, you save your code, and when you come here, you need to refresh. If your code is right, you will also get it over here. And when you check how every website created this is how they did it. They wrote that instruction in HTML, and HTML was able to provide a title, and also provide an icon over here. This is beautiful. You don't have to memorize it now. You just have to see it and use it. With time, you'll be used to all of these things. And you can see that every code we are writing now follows a structure. Now let's go to the body section and start writing code to display certain things on the page itself. Now, to display certain things on the page itself, the first thing I'm going to do is to tell the page to have a certain attribute. The attribute I'm going to give to this page is called BG color, and this is how you spell it. Now, every attribute you give to any element will have equal to a value, and the value must be in quotes. So you can see that all the values are used, all the values are in quotes. So here, I'm just going to type yellow over here, just to tell the body tag that Pick this attribute of BG color and color yourself yellow or color your background yellow. Let me go ahead and save this because if I don't save it, I'm not going to see it. If my instruction is right, when I come here and I refresh, the body will obey the instruction I gave. And you can see that something has started happening to the body of your web page. For you to continue seeing things on your web page, you need to continue writing HTML code. So we are going to go back to the code and put some code here. The first code we are going to write here is to write that it should display a logo. The logo is an image. The elements in HTML that we use, yes, we'll talk about all of that later on. The element in HTML that we use to load images is called IMG. IMG is also one of the elements that we don't close because an image doesn't require something within it and a closing. This is one of the elements we don't close. All you need to do is to provide attributes to it. One of the most popular attributes we give to images is to tell the browser where to find the image. If you want to tell the browser where to find the image, the attribute is called src. Equal to, then you provide the value. This src means where should I find the image? What is the source of the image? So img src means image source. Later, if I want to make the image clickable, then I'll use href to make it clickable through an anchor tag. I'll talk about that later on. Right now, we want to load the logo. So when I go to my images folder, I realize that there is a logo here. What is important is for you to know the file name of what you want to load and the location. The location is in images and the file name is retalogo.png. Same spelling. Now, this is where our code exists. So the code that is written here will follow the path that you provided. If you say images, it will look for images. If it finds it, it will open it. Then it will look for reta-logo.png. All right, I'll talk about that again. So I'll come here and say the source should be images, then reta-logo.png. I'll go ahead and save. After I save, I'll go to my browser and refresh and see that it has loaded the logo over here beautifully. The logo looks too big. I can come here and give it another attribute and say that control the width of the logo. I'll provide a value and say use 100 pixels for the width of the logo. If I want to control the height, I can also use height attribute to control the height of the logo. So in HTML, it is very, very simple. This time I don't want to control the height. It's very, very simple. We use elements like this, and some elements require attributes like this. When you start writing code in HTML, it's going to be very, very easy to remember. When I refresh this, if the instruction is right, it is going to obey, and it's going to make it follow what you said it should do. The next thing I'm going to do here is to come under the image code and create another element called H1. H1 stands for heading 1, and heading 1 is used to create headings or big titles. There are several levels of headings we use in HTML. We have H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, and they all show the level of the heading. The largest is heading 1. So if you use H1, you need to close H1. If you use H2, definitely you need to close H2. So over here, I can say welcome to Fashion Sense. And this is supposed to be a heading that should appear in the body. Let me save this. And if my instruction is right, when we refresh this, we should see something in an H1 style. Now, later on, you'll realize that when you are creating HTML or when you are creating web pages, anything about how something looks, especially text and colors, should not be handled by HTML. It will be handled by CSS because the job of CSS is to style. So this size that we are seeing, if you want it larger or less, you can use CSS to style it. This background that we have put here, we shouldn't even use HTML to create it. But since we are writing code in only HTML at the moment, I use HTML, the BG color attribute to give this. But CSS is a master of styling. And so with CSS, we'll be able to create any style that we want to make the website appear incredibly good looking. All right. So we've seen how the H1 element looks like and how it works. There's another element we use called the P element. The P element is used for paragraphs. And you'll see that any element I open, I close it. So far, we've talked about the HTML element, the head element, the title element, the link element, body element, IMG, H1, and now we are talking about the P element. The P element is used to create paragraphs. And so if you have a paragraph of text, you use a P element to write it. So I can say, welcome to Fashion Sense. We are the leading designers of world-class fashion designs. We value our customers and our mission is to create the best fashion to make your day. I'm just making something up. Now, there are certain things that you put in your code that are supposed to appear to the visitor. Those things, you need to type them exactly how they should appear. There are certain things they are not supposed to appear. They are part of the instructions. So you need to write it the way the instruction should be. Like what I've done here is not supposed to appear like this, but what I put here in the title, you realize that it is going to appear. So I need to type it in a way that it will appear and show to the user the way I want it to show. This is also going to appear, so I need to type it well. This is also going to appear, so I need to type it well. But it lives in a P element. So let's come here and refresh, and you see that I've been able to create a paragraph of text. The next thing I'm going to create is going to create a simple navigation bar that will allow you to click on things. To do this, I'm just going to put it in between the H1 and the P. And I will start by just typing what I want to show. So home, about us, projects, services. I'm using this bar, it's called pipe, to separate them. This is just text that I didn't put in any element. Once you are in the body tag, even when you type text raw, it will appear on the page. But then if you want to control it, it needs to be wrapped in elements. Now this text, it's just text. I want them to appear as links, so I'm going to make them clickable. To do that, I'm going to wrap them in. I want home to be clickable on its own. So I'm going to wrap home in an element called A. This A element is the element we use to create links. It's called anchor. Because of this A element, this home, look, depending on where I close the A, whatever is in between will now be a child of the A. The A is anchor, and it is used to create things like links. Now, when I say it should link, I need to tell it where to link to. So I'm going to provide an attribute to the A element, and the attribute is called href, and I'll provide a value. This href is what we use all the time to tell the A element where to go when this is clicked on. Now, when you click on home, I want it to load the index.html file again. And so when I save this and we come to the web page, we are going to see that after refreshing, it is now a link. It is clickable. When you click on it, it loads the same page. So we don't see that it's working, but it's working. We don't see that it's working, but it's working. Let's make this also clickable. And I want to see if someone can help me do that. So this about us. We need to single out exactly what we want to make clickable. The first thing we will do is to put the A tag around it and close it. If we don't close it here, wherever we close it, that is where the link will end. Let me come and close it somewhere here. If I close it here, it means everything in between here will be affected. So if I tell this to href to a location, all of them will be affected. Now, this one here is linking to our own hosts. So we just provide a file name and it will just look for it. Because remember, we are still in the index file. So in the index file, if you provide a file name, it will go around looking for that file. Let me explain that by creating a link on the contact us. This contact us, I'm going to make it a link on its own. And I'm going to tell it to look for a file called contactus.html. This means that I've given it instructions that there is another web page among our files called contact us. I didn't put any folder here, so it is not going to look through any folder. It should find a file called contact us. Let me save it. Go to the page, refresh, and now it is a link. All these ones are now links. Now this contact file, the question is, do we have a file called contact us? When you click on it, it's supposed to give you an error because it couldn't find it. There's no file called contact us. So over here, when you are done creating your home page, you have to create another file called contact us.html. And inside this contact us, you can create a web page here. Let me just put some simple text in it and say that this is the contact us page. This is a contact us page. Click here to return to the home page. Okay. Then the here, I will make it clickable. So I'll put A around it. Remember how this is done. I'll show where it should go. And the homepage file is called index.html. This means the link that will appear when this here becomes clickable will follow this instruction to load this file when you click on it. But all of this will not show on the web page because it is an instruction. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now I'll go back to our page, refresh this again, click on contact us, and now you see that something has appeared. The text we provided has appeared. Remember, the text didn't follow the instruction to break the line to put this click here under because you didn't write the right element that should break the line. We have code for every instruction. For example, if I want this to come to a new line, I don't just press enter. Pressing enter doesn't mean anything in the HTML language. So whatever you type will come and join what you have here. So if you want it to break, we have an element called break, BR. This BR, I'm going to save it by pressing Ctrl S. It is an instruction that tells anything in HTML to break and go to a new line. So if I want to break more lines, I need more BR. Or I can use CSS to provide that instruction as well. Now, this click here is now working. When you click on it, it will take you back to the home page. So the reason why websites can link between pages is that from one page, you can open another page. From the other page, you can come back to that page. And if all the pages have a uniform design, you don't see that they are different that much. You only see that you are clicking and it's working. Now, the other link we are creating here, we want it to link outside our website. So what I'm going to do right now is that I'm going to show you how to link outside your website. If you are linking within your website, just put the file name like we have done here. If you are linking outside your website, your link should begin with http://. If you want to do HTTPS, still is correct. The moment you give HTTPS or HTTP, it means you should move outside our local host and go to the web. I can link back to our own host by putting our website address here that it should go online and go and locate our site again. But with this, I can load any website here. I'm telling it to load google.com. So because of the link, the href I've given it, when I come here and I come refresh and I click on this, it is going to load google.com because that is the instruction I gave. This google.com, you can't type it without the HTTP. If you type it without the HTTP, it will assume that it is local. So it will look for it among your files. But since it is not local, I need to put HTTPS or HTTP, and that protocol tells it to go online and search for it. Now you can see that when I click on services, I'm getting Google. When I click on projects, I'm getting Google. When I click anywhere, you can see that all the three are highlighted. This is because the A tag that I wrote it around all the three. This A tag should not end around all the three. I want it to end only after about us. This means that whenever you are linking, you need to state specifically where you want to link to. Okay, let me refresh this and you can see that now these ones are no longer links. I can create links for them. But now the link is here for About Us, and when I click, it goes to where I want it to go. If I create a page called About Us, I can link to About Us. Now, as you continue writing code, you see that your index file, your code starts becoming, it will start increasing and it will start looking clumsy. Although this looks clumsy, if you understand HTML, you can read and understand every single line because you will know what everything means. If you use a professional code editor, it can organize your code in a more readable way. So as it becoming more and more complicated, it is still structured in a way that is so easy to read. However, when you look at your code, you should still be able to read it. The next thing we want to do is to load a banner. This banner, let's see where it is saved. It is in our images folder and it's called fashionbanner.jpg. So quickly, we want to load the fashion banner here. It is an image. So what is the element to load images? The element to load images, anybody should put it in the chat. The element to load images. So please, this A, we use it for creating hyperlinks. Okay. This link, we use it for linking other files onto the page. So anytime you want to create a hyperlink, you use the A tag. Okay. If you want to create an image, you don't use src, you use img. So the element is called img, and every element is wrapped in the angle brackets, okay? So please don't forget the angle brackets, all right? Good. Then here, I need to give an attribute. The attribute is where to find it. What is the name of the attribute that will go and look for the image? The name of the attribute is what Prosper gave us. It's called SRC. SRC means where is the source of the image? You provide the value. The value should be the source. Now we all know that the image is in the images folder, and the image is called fashion-banner.jpg. Once you provide this right, it is going to find it. If you don't provide it right, it is not going to find it. Let's save this and check if we got it right. If we didn't get it, it is not going to show. If we got it right, then voila, it is going to load the image. This image looks beautiful on its own. That means sometimes some of the beauty that comes onto your website comes because of the beauty of the images and the banners we create. This is why a front-end developer has some graphic design skills to be able to create appealing images. And these appealing images, once they are loaded onto the web page, you realize that it makes the page look much better. Now, this image looks too large. I want to reduce it a little, so I want to control the width. I'll come outside here and write another attribute called width and give it a width. Let me give it 800 pixels. And I'm going to save Control S. Now, when I refresh, if my instruction is right, it is going to obey me. So little by little, you can see that we have created a web page. And we are still creating it. We are not done. Next, we want to have a video on our web page. Should we add a video onto our web page? Yes or no? Let me see in the chat. Should we add a video onto our web page? So you can see that when someone is creating a website, they make use of different things. Watch this. We have used an image for our favicon. We've used an image for our logo. We've used an image for our banner. We have used text, and we have used HTML code to organize them and to create links. So this HTML code, what it's actually doing is to help you put everything together. Next, we want to introduce a video onto this web page. When you learn HTML and CSS well, little by little, writing your code and checking your code, making sure your code is right, you can end up creating a beautiful design. To use a video on your website, it is okay. It is possible you can host your own videos and load your own videos onto your web page. However, it is advisable that you use a video hosting resources of YouTube to host your videos. Videos can be very large, can take time to load, requires a lot of optimization and features to make it load faster and work faster. YouTube has done all of those things to make videos work well. Plus, YouTube has space to store all your videos for you for free. And so it is okay to use YouTube to handle your videos. However, if your company wants to handle their own videos, you can still load your own videos from your server. The video file is large, and so it is going to be part of your bandwidth. But if YouTube is serving your video, everything will be taken care of by the YouTube server and all the features they have put on videos. So for most of your videos on your web pages, it's advisable to load them from YouTube. And so let's assume that this company, we have sent our video to YouTube and uploaded it on YouTube. Now that our video is on YouTube, we are going to look for it on YouTube and bring it onto our web page. So let's go to youtube.com and look for our video. So let's search for fashion video. And let's look for any beautiful video we would like to use. I'm seeing this video here, and this video looks good. Let's assume this is our own video. Whether it is our video or not, any video on YouTube can be loaded onto a web page. When I click on this video to open it, YouTube allows me to embed this video. There's something called embed. Please type embed in the chat for me. Embed, E-M-B-E-D. So we can embed this, and YouTube allows you to embed videos. And so YouTube can give you the HTML code to fetch this video from their server. The HTML code that YouTube gives you can be found in Share. When you go to Share and you go to Embed, you'll get an HTML code. This is pure HTML. It uses an element called iframe with a lot of properties: the width, the height, the source, the frame border, the title. Later, we'll talk about all of these, a lot of attributes. But this is a pure HTML code. YouTube is saying that if you want this video to show on your site, just copy this HTML code. So with this HTML code copied, let's go back to our code, find a place under the image, and paste that HTML code there. It is a lot, but don't worry about it. It will generate a video from YouTube. Let's go ahead and save this. And let's go back to our website and refresh. The moment we refresh, we'll see that there's a video under here. When I click here, the video will start playing. Let me share my screen again and let you hear the sound of the video. So this video can play on your web page. And because of the numerous attributes, you can control a lot of things that happens on YouTube. I can make this play in full screen. It's playing from my website, but it can play in full screen or any screen. I can control the width to control the height. I can control the width to let it appear exactly how I want it to appear. I can control the height to let it appear exactly how I want it to appear. I can control some of the things that YouTube do on videos that appear on my website. I can control a lot of features here by understanding all the attributes that came with the iframe. There are some attributes, they are not present in the iframe, but they still exist. If you know them, you can use them to still manipulate the video to let it appear well. But this video that is playing, even though it is playing on my website, YouTube is bearing the cost of the bandwidth and the streaming of the video for me. And it's completely free. The only thing is that when the video ends, other related videos can show, but there are attributes to control that as well. These days, YouTube is trying to control the related videos that appear after this video on your website. In the past, you could control everything 100% and tell YouTube not to show any video after this. But this video is playing right on your website through YouTube. So over here, you can see that we have created a very simple web page. Our web page is made up of images, text, videos, made up of instructions in the background. With this knowledge, you can go ahead and create a simple web page. So what we want you to do is to use HTML and probably CSS to create a simple web page And is it okay to copy a video from YouTube without a copyright? Okay, so this particular video, I am just loading it on my website for this demonstration. When it comes to copyright, it depends on the owner of the video. You can load any video on your website. And most videos will not have any, most owners will not have any issue loading their video on your web page. However, if someone has a video that they don't want you to load on their web page, they can contact you and inform you to remove it. But most of your videos, most of the videos you use on your web page should be your videos or very related videos to what you are doing. The idea is not to use people's videos. When it comes to copyright, where the copyright issue really arises is when you upload someone's video on your YouTube channel. So the video is on YouTube already, and you load it, you download it, and you put it on your channel so that you will get views. That is where the copyright issue comes from. With this, there's nothing that wrong unless the owner says that, okay, I don't want this to show on your website. That one, it is the owner who will do that. YouTube will not do anything about this. So if the owner contacts you, then you will be asked to remove it. All right. So what we are going to do is that we are going to take a very short break. And when we return, we will introduce CSS to control the styling of this simple web page we have created. Remember, you can control the height and the width of this video just by controlling the attributes over here. HTML is a language that you just need to provide instructions to. And whatever instructions you provide, it is going to follow and obey that instruction. That is if you write in HTML. Remember, this is not Python. This is another language called HTML. This is how it looks. Now, we've created a simple web page here. And if this is the first time you are creating web pages, you should see that, okay, so this is how you continue to create web pages. And even this YouTube page you are seeing, this is how they created it. Little by little with HTML and CSS and JavaScript, they ended up with this page. Every page is like that. Sometimes we can use a framework to do a lot of things for us or to organize things in a special way for us. But at the end of the day, every web page is made up of HTML. And if CSS is added to it, it will improve on the beauty. Now, what we have done with HTML here, I want to know what you think. Do you think this is nice? Anybody? And this here, we are just writing HTML in a very, very raw form, okay? In a very, very raw form. When you use professional code editors, things are more organized and more professional. So when we get to the web development class, we'll have a web development class and we'll learn HTML and CSS and JavaScript, at least to a good extent that will give you, a tech professional, the basics of these languages, because this is another language. So after learning Python, you know HTML, you know CSS. You also need to know SQL. So all these languages, we will learn them in the root phase. And at least the basics, okay? Then in the specialization phases, those who will upgrade on them, they'll continue from there. We'll take a short break. When we return, we will introduce CSS to this and improve on the beauty, and we will put it online. Right now, it is offline. So when you are creating a website, you create it offline on your machine, unless you create it directly on the server, which is possible. When we get to web designing, we are going to be building our website directly on the server, and you'll see how it is. So we will take a short break and we'll return and add CSS to this. Thank you very much, and I'll see you after the break.
Thank you very much, sir. So let's take a 10 minutes break. It's 7:50 p.m. GMT. Return 8 o'clock GMT. 10 minutes break. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome back to class. Thank you, Ashanafi, Olobokola, Emmanuel. Welcome back to class. I believe you are following the lesson so far. What we are working on, everyone here is required to build a simple web page using HTML and CSS, and you put it online. So we've gotten to the point where we start seeing what you are working on. This training is not just about you receiving information, because we need to get the feedback from you. So with all that we have studied in web hosting and everything, a web hosting account is being set up for everybody. Some of you here have received yours. And if you have not registered your domain, please do and send it. If you have sent it, by tomorrow morning, you should have your hosting details. What is important is for you to point your domain to the name service. And I don't know if anyone here has done that already. When you point it to the name service, your domain name will connect to the hosting account, and whatever you put online will show. If you have pointed it, please type your domain in the chat and let me see. And the name servers have been given. So those who are yet to register, the moment you are done registering, point it, because if you point it, anytime you point it, it's going to take time to resolve to the server. And that resolution takes up to 72 hours. We call it DNS propagation. And so you should connect it as soon as possible. Sometimes the moment you register, if you provide the name service at that very instant, what happens is that it makes it easier and faster. I wish we had one that is connected already, and we will use it for demonstration this evening. If not, we will definitely we'll put it online tonight after the design. Then by tomorrow, we will see how it is displayed. All right, so watch the videos on, just go to your domain account, and if you registered with domain.com, last time I mentioned in the video that there's a place you edit the name service. If you register with GoDaddy, there's a place to edit name service. So you need to look for that and you do that. Okay. So far, all the lessons are available on Slack. So any one of them that you want to refer to, please do. Now, this training is a very important training. You saw how some of the things we are learning here is making cloud computing easier. That same way, the things we are learning here is going to make software engineering easier, cloud computing easier, database management easier, data analytics easier, data science easier, cybersecurity easier. This is a very powerful course. And so make sure you study and do all the projects and understand everything. If there's anything here you don't understand, please make sure you revisit the videos and learn. And you can also ask questions. I'm going to share my screen and we will go ahead and look at another language called CSS. CSS is a powerful language. It is not referred to as a programming language, but it's a language we refer to as a styling language. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it is a styling language. So if you want to know what CSS is, we don't usually call CSS a programming language because it is actually a styling language. So please type this in the chat for me that CSS is a styling language. We use this CSS to style web pages. JavaScript is a programming language. Python is a programming language. CSS is a styling language. CSS describes how elements are to be displayed on the screen. And we use CSS in other applications as well. It saves a lot of work. It is also very easy to understand. And you can store your CSS in its own files. So I'm going to visit the code that we wrote, and we are going to add some CSS to it. CSS must be in the head section of your code. And so you can link to a CSS file, or you can have CSS directly on this page. Please listen to this. We know what CSS stands for. Cascading Style Sheet. Please type it in the chat for me. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And it's a styling language, and you typed that already. But type what it stands for, Cascading Style Sheets. Thank you. Now, inside HTML, now I'm going to say something very powerful. Inside HTML, HTML allows you to connect to CSS and connect to JavaScript. When it comes to web development and website creation, there are three languages that always work together. We have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Anyone who will be working on front end or full stack, you will definitely need to learn these three languages, aside additional languages that you will need. Inside HTML, there's a special element that allows you to write CSS. That element is called style. So just like all the elements that we have created, the moment I create an element called style, between this, I'm allowed to write CSS code. So I can write my CSS code directly inside my HTML file, or I can write my CSS code in a separate file and use this link to link it to my HTML. If I want to write in JavaScript, we have an element called script that I can use to write JavaScript inside my HTML. Today, we are not going to deal with JavaScript, but we want to write some CSS. And so I've come to this element and we'll write our code right here inside our HTML file. Remember, I'm still in the head section, and the only thing I've done is to create a new element called style. This is the element that is used to write CSS. So I'm going to quickly explain a few things about CSS to you, and we will go ahead and write some CSS code that will control our website. Now, CSS is very, very simple to learn. There are a few things you need to know about CSS when you want to learn them, when you want to learn it. First, you need to know the definition of CSS and what it is. After you know that, CSS is made up of a syntax, the format you write CSS code. The first thing you do is to find a selector. You find a selector and then you open curly braces like this. I'm just showing you how CSS looks like. CSS looks like what I'm doing. There is always a selector and there are these curly braces. So anytime you see CSS, you are going to recognize it. Inside the selector, we have an attribute, then colon, and then a value. Then we end with semicolon like this. You may have several attributes, or you can attribute the same as property. You can have several properties. Here, we don't say equal to. We use colon, and we provide a value. This is how CSS looks like. Now, when it comes to the selectors, sorry, there are three common types of selectors. Okay, we have the element selector, we have the class selector, and we have the ID selector. So all you'll be writing in CSS is this. Provide your selector and define your code. That's all. Okay. So inside here, I'm going to use the same principle to write HTML code. Now, what is going to be my selector? My selector can be an HTML element or a class. I'll be talking about HTML elements and I'll also be talking about class. So I'm going to use the HTML elements we have here to control my web page. Please listen to me. All the HTML elements we have created here, we can write CSS code for them. If you'll be doing styling, you shouldn't color or do styling with HTML. So I'm going to remove the yellow we placed there, and I'm going to check the web page now. The yellow should be gone by now. This thing should be handled by CSS. So the first thing I'm going to do is to target my first selector. Your selector can be any of the HTML elements. This is an element, this is an element, this is an element, this is an element. So I'm going to target the body element first. So this is what I'll do. I'll say body. And body is now my selector. I've selected body. I open the curly braces like this. Then I come here and then I control the properties or the attributes. There's a property called background color. And I can type the color here. Usually we use hex code for coloring. Hex code is a way to color using hexadecimal. To write in hex code, you begin with hash, then you provide 2 digits in R, 2 digits in G, and 2 digits in B, and you end like this. Well, that is it. So this is the hex code. You can choose to provide 3 instead of 6. So it's going to be RGB. We've already learned something about RGB. So what I'm going to do is to provide the value in hex code. Remember, I have used the body as a selector. I've selected body. Selector means what do you want to select? I've targeted this. And I'm saying that the background should be this. And I'm going to, if I type my yellow here, let's see if it is going to work. I'm going to save this. This is CSS language that I'm writing inside my HTML file. So when we come here, you can see that the yellow is working, and it's working through CSS, not HTML now. This is a different language, but because it works with HTML, HTML welcomes it within it. Just that it needs to live in the element called style. It is not professional to type the name of the color because we have more than 16 million colors, and you can't type names for them. So in web development, we usually use hex code. So I'm going to use the hex code FFEB and 3B. And I've explained the meaning of the hex code and what it does. For example, if I say CCC, it's a hex code that will give you a grayscale. So we'll get a gray background. All right. The code that I created before, let's see the background color it will give us. It will give us the yellowish color that we created. So you realize that almost every color has a hex code. I can say FFCC00, it is a code. When I refresh it, I'll see the color that it has. I can say FF0000, and this will create only red because I have used the first section to be red. This is full red, full red. So if you check this hexadecimal FF, what does FF stand in hexadecimal? You realize that this is probably the 255. And this means 0 for G and 0 for B. So I have targeted only the red. Let me make this all 000. That means everything should be pure black. You are not supposed to see anything. Let me target only the G and make this. Let me put this here and let's see. So we are going to target the G, and so we have G. And that same way, if we target the B, so when you are doing hexadecimal, you are still doing RGB. All right, so let's move on. All right, so I've written my first property in CSS, and in CSS, you go ahead and you create a lot of properties. This is the only thing that CSS is about. You just create this for all the elements you want to target. So at the end of the day, you have a lot of lines, each targeting each element. By the time we are done, you see that the beauty of this work is going to change. I'm going to inside the body, I want to tell the body to use a certain attribute called font family. And this font family will indicate the fonts that should be used across the body element. So I'm using this font family, two font names. And so all the fonts that will be used on the web page will conform to the font family that I have used. Because any text that appears still lives within the body. So because all of our code lives within the body, if I do something to the body, it affects almost everything. Let me add one attribute here, like text align, and say center. In CSS, this is an attribute or a property, then column, then the value. So with this, I'm saying that text align is center. So because of this, it has aligned everything to the center. I can continue working. And as I work, you can see that everything is responding to my CSS code. The code I'm writing now is not HTML. This is a different language called CSS. Let me add some more attributes here. Let me tell this to have no margin, 0. Also have no padding. Later in CSS, you'll learn about margins and paddings. So I think I'm done with the properties I'll give to my body. I'm done. This is what I want to do. After this, I'll come here and target another HTML element. I want to target the H1 element. Open this, close this. CSS is just like this. By following the syntax I gave you here, you have learned CSS. Just know what you want to select and know the names of the attributes you want to apply. That's all. If you want to target an HTML element, you just type the name of the element as a selector, just like I've done here. I want to target the H1 element, so you just type it and open the same curly braces. So whatever I will do will affect anything that is called H1. So when you target an element, it will affect anywhere that element is used. If you want to target something specifically, you can use a class to target that, and I'll show you. So here, I want to give this a color, and I'll use this color code here. And when I check this, I've applied a different color code to my H1. So you see that the H1 has responded because I selected H1. This is a language that is changing the world. It's called CSS, and it's very, very simple if you understand how it works. You select something, put it in this style, and then provide your attributes and their values. This color, I can provide any color I want. Let's leave it this way. When we are done and it's not nice, we can change it. I can say that the top margin should have a value of 20 pixels. So because I've done that, it should, let's refresh and see. All right, so it responded to that. As you work on the attribute, you realize that you can adjust anything at any level for it to behave specifically exactly how you want it to behave. I'm going to target all the A elements now, and I'm going to give it my first attribute called font size. Now, the first time you see CSS, it may look some way to you, but as you continue to use it, you realize that this font size attribute, that is the same attribute we use for everything we want to size, every text we want to size. So a time will come, you realize that you know a lot of the attributes, the properties, and their values. You are used to them. I give it 18, so anywhere we have an A element, you can see that the value has changed to 18. These two didn't have A around them, so you see that they didn't respond. I'm going to add a number of attributes, and when I'm done, the work we've done is going to change. I'm going to tell it not to have any text decoration. So I'll say text decoration equals to none. And when I do that, the underlining and those things will disappear. This is CSS, and this is how we style web pages. I'm going to give it margin 0 and 10 pixels for the width and the height. And it's going to respond to it. And it has created 10 pixels of margins between them. These two didn't have A around them, so let me create A for them so that we create a proper navigation bar. So we have this, I'll just put an A tag around them. I'll make the reference to, if you want to create a link but shouldn't link to anything, you can use this hash to indicate that it shouldn't link to anything, but it's a link. So this is also a link that should not link to anything. So I'll just say hash, and because of hash, it will not link to anything. All right. So with what I'm doing, I'm applying HTML and CSS. And you can see that the CSS is responding to the styling. Let me apply styles to the P element. When we are done, the whole work is going to change, and you tell me whether the beauty of what we have done is the same as what we had before. CSS is very simple. Just type your element, put these curly braces, and I'm using Notepad. Notepad means you are typing the code very, very raw. If you are using VS Code, most of the code they write for you. When you begin typing something, they complete it for you. It makes it very, very easy. CSS is actually very, very easy, and it is very, very simple. I'm controlling the maximum width. I said the P should not have a maximum, should not go beyond 800 pixels. So let's refresh this, and you see that the P has responded. So the P element has responded. So once you provide the right instruction, it will obey you. Just target the element you want to style, and you style it. So here I targeted the P. I used my selector to select the P, and I gave these properties. Property, another term for property is attribute. I gave these attributes and these values. As I give this, it follows that. The next thing I want to target is the IMG tag or IMG element. And I'm going to give it a margin of 20 pixels to 0. And all of these, let's see how this will behave. All right. So it created a top margin of 20 and top and bottom of 20 and a width of 0. So because of the top and bottom, you see that I separated this over here. I can see that the top is okay, but I just want to affect the bottom. So I can go ahead and say margin top should be 0. Then margin bottom should be 20 pixels. So when I refresh this, the top will stay as it is, but the bottom, okay, let me see what happened. Margin bottom, okay, I made a mistake. So if something is not working, it's probably because you made a mistake. Or maybe I want the top should have just 10 pixels. So I'll say margin top should be 10 pixels and the bottom should be 20. Or I'll make the top 5 pixels. You see, when you are styling, sometimes you change simple things in minute ways that will make it look okay to your eyes. So the 10 pixels looked too much for me. So I just made it 5 and I increased this a little bit. When I get to the video, I can also put a margin at the bottom just to style that as well. So the next element I'm going to target is the iframe that controls our video. And you can see that everything I'm typing follows the same format. Just select and provide the properties and the value. Another word for property is attribute. Let me use these same properties for this iframe. And let's see if the video will also respond. You see, it has also gotten a margin bottom and it looks like this. Later, let's work on the width and the height of the video itself. So here, let's make this 800 pixels and find an approximate height of, let's say, 500 pixels. So when I refresh this, it looks much better. The next thing I want to do is to create, I'm going to create a container around my links here and call it a nav bar or navigation bar. So to create that container, I can use an HTML element we call div. So where my navigation bar is or where my links are, I can create an HTML element called a div. A div is a container. And this container allows you to control your website into containers. And you can style the containers and make your website look more organized. So if you are going to be doing front-end development, everything we are doing is front-end web development. You are going to be using div a lot to create a lot of containers to organize your page. Now, this div, I can target the div in CSS by saying that div as my selector, because it's also an element. But I may have another div somewhere, so I want to specifically state that I want this particular div. So with this particular div, if I want it to stand out, I will give it an attribute called class and call the class navbar or any name I want. This time we have a class. A class is another way to select in CSS. You can select by class or select by element. A class in CSS may not be what you are thinking of in Java or Python. A class is a special attribute of an element that allows you to give it a name that you can target in CSS. So I've given it this name so that I can target it in CSS. If you want to target a class, you target it in a different way. If you are targeting an element, just type the name of the element. But if you are targeting a class, you begin with a dot. So I'll say dot navbar. The moment I say dot navbar, CSS as a language understands that it should go and look for a class called navbar and apply the attributes I'm about to provide here to that particular class. I'm going to say that this navbar class should have a background color, and you make sure your spellings are right, of F8, F8, F8. And this will create, this is a color that looks a little bit like white, but in grayscale. So it has created this white around it. But I want it to look much better. So I'm going to apply some paddings to it. Later, you learn more about paddings and margins. So apply a padding 10 pixels to 0. So the top and bottom will have 10 pixels. Then the left and right will have 0. That is what what my code means. Little by little, we are using CSS to influence our web page. And when you are done and something doesn't look right, you can go ahead and make it look better. This is how CSS looks like in all the world. The next thing I'm going to do is to go back and say that this navbar class, after you have targeted it, target an HTML element called A. So this means that after targeting, you can select two things at a time. If you select two things at a time, it means the second one here is a child of the first one. This means that inside the navbar class, if you find any element called A within it, then apply these specific properties to it. So in this navbar class, it is under this div. It belongs to this div. Inside this div, we have a lot of A elements. So I'm targeting the A this time. And this A element, I'm going to tell the A element to have a pattern of 10 for top and bottom and 15 pixels for left and right. Then I'm going to give it an attribute called transition and tell it to apply transition with background color 0.3 S is. This is telling it to ease into the background color with a certain time. All right. Later on, we'll get into the details of that. So by doing that, it has applied what I did to all the A elements. You can see that all these things, they were wrapped in A elements. That is why they all obeyed. So the code I wrote in CSS didn't affect any other thing. It did not affect anything on your page. Exactly what you targeted or you selected. I'm going to go ahead and tell all my A tags to do something. All my navbar A tags, I can tell them that anytime we hover over you, since you are a link, we can provide extra properties of especially links and say that when you hover, this means when a mouse comes over you, change your background color to this. Remember, the hex code can be 3 or 6. So what I've done here has given it an instruction that anytime somebody puts a mouse over it, it should change the background color. Wow. That means any A element here under this div, when the mouse comes over it, it should do what is happening. Wait a minute. What if we want all the A elements to have a specific color on their own? Let's provide a color that we want, any color that we will choose. I don't know which color will stand out, but let's see if let's try this and see if this is nice. So with this, we are saying that it's not nice, so you change it. Okay, now when it comes to hex codes, there are several ways to find the right hex code. You don't have to guess. You have to look for the correct code you want. So let it have, I don't want to do anything complicated. So let me search for dark brown hex code. So this is the hex code for dark brown. Let me use it for the color of our navigation bar. So let's assume we like it this way because the lady is wearing something brown. And let's say that when you hover over it, we want to switch and make the background rather brown, and we make the color white. So we'll go to the hover section and say that if someone mounces over with the hover, let the background be this color and then the foreground color become white. The hex code for white is FFFFFF. It is very, very simple. The hex code for black is 0000. So it has responded. You are not seeing because it will only happen when you mouse over. So you can see that CSS really obeys instructions. I'm saying that when you mouse over, change the background to this, change the foreground to that. I can tell it to do whatever I want. I can tell it to reduce the font size, increase the font size, do anything. CSS allows you to do anything you want just to make your website look better. Looking at the navigation bar we have now, I think it looks much better than what we had previously because of the introduction of CSS. Now, all these interesting things, you can see that even when it's changing, it changes it with some transition. HTML doesn't have the ability to do this. This beautiful thing we've done here, HTML cannot do it. HTML is used to define the structure of the page. When it comes to beauty and styling, you need to learn CSS because CSS, the more you learn it, the more you realize that, wow, there are amazing things you can do with CSS. I think the space I have here is too much. I want to close it up a little. So I'll go to my CSS code and check my IMG tag, and the margin bottom is too much. Why do I have 30 pixels? Let's just use 10 pixels and let's go back and refresh. I've reduced the space. Probably let me put some space before the logo because the logo is hitting the top too much. I don't like it. So the margin top should rather be, let me give it 15 pixels. So, sorry, what did I target? I targeted all IMGs. So you can see that it affected every IMG. This is a problem. This is a problem, you see? So everything I did here, you can see that it affected every IMG. It affected every IMG. And so it affected what I didn't intend for it to affect. I was trying to target this logo, but you can see that whatever I did affected this because this is also an IMG element. So how do I target this logo specifically? I can come here and look at this logo carefully and say that this logo, even though it is using IMG, let me rather give it a class so that I can target it specifically. So I call it logo. So when I come here, instead of targeting every IMG, I can provide general attributes for all IMGs. But when it comes to my logo, I'll target it because it's a class. It needs to begin with dot logo. And I'll say that the logo alone should not follow what is happening here. As for this logo, it should have only 10 pixels for the bottom and 15 pixels for the top margin. So when we refresh, you can see that the logo has obeyed. Let me increase the top margin of the logo to 30 pixels. When I refresh, the logo has obeyed. But what I did didn't affect this because I didn't target this. You can see how to target in HTML, and it's interesting. You can target with an HTML element, or you can target with a class. CSS is interesting. I'm going to add a few lines of, let me see. Okay. I don't know where we were before we started doing this, but I'm going to copy everything we have now. And try and undo everything we did before CSS came. I'm trying to see if it will work. Oh, no. All right, I'm going to remove all the CSS. All the CSS gone. And I'm saving it. I'm going to reload it and show you what we had previously. There's a BG color that is not there. This is HTML without CSS. Let me use it to recreate another file. Where are we? Sorry. Let me use it to create, let's say, the services.html. And let me go back and paste the new one with CSS. And let's go back to this services and link it to the services.html. So when I come here and I refresh this, this is the website with CSS. And when I click here, this is the same website without CSS. Now, when we did this previously, we all said that this looked amazing. Didn't we say that? But with CSS, what will you say now? With CSS, what will you say now? It's a little bit of CSS. With a little bit of CSS we've done, what will you say now? If without CSS was amazing, then with CSS, doesn't it look cleaner, easier, smoother, better? Wait a minute. Let me take you to YouTube and show you something. We can all see YouTube. This is YouTube. This YouTube is looking like this because of CSS. I can hack into YouTube and remove their CSS, and you are going to see how YouTube will look with no CSS. So I'm going to target their CSS code, and I'm going to remove it. Wait a minute. How can you go into YouTube and remove their CSS code? I'm going to remove their CSS code, and you are going to see how YouTube will look like if they don't have CSS. So I'm just going to look at where they created their CSS links, or they link to CSS. You can see that YouTube is also HTML. Isn't it incredible? So I'm just going to find something in HTML quickly, and I'm going to remove it. So I'm inside their code, I can see a lot of styles here, right? All these styles here, let me remove them. So I'm destroying their CSS. You can see CSS in YouTube. And as I remove the CSS from YouTube, all of this CSS, I'm removing their CSS. If I'm able to target all the CSS on YouTube and I remove them, you will see at the end of the day how YouTube looks like without CSS. And you understand that CSS is a very important language. Very, very important. I'm still looking for more CSS because there are a lot of CSS that they used on YouTube. If I'm able to target the main CSS, you realize that the CSS will be gone and YouTube will become naked without CSS. People have a lot of questions to ask. I think I've removed some already. Okay, not much. I've spoiled the page a little bit, but not much. Let me continue till I target their main CSS. And you will see what will happen to this YouTube. So I'll just go through their code. And you see, I can read every code I'm looking at because I know HTML, I know CSS. I've known these things for more than 19 years. All right. So you study. Let me find any CSS code here and I will just remove them. And once I remove them and I'm able to get the real one I'm looking for, there are a lot of them, but there's one that is really controlling a lot of things. The moment I target that and I remove it, you're going to see that, whoa, is this YouTube? You can see that the page is already changing. I've seen a lot of them here. And these, the CSS I'm targeting now, they are linked to different files. I just want to try and do this in time so that I've gotten something big. Wait a minute, is this YouTube? Yes, this is youtube.com. What? Okay. Now, when you visit YouTube and you see what? Wait a minute. When you visit YouTube and you see this, well, YouTube, the same YouTube, oh, the same HTML. I've not touched HTML. This is YouTube for you. The only thing I have done is to remove their CSS. So you can see the real face of YouTube. Somebody said, this is my real face. This is YouTube without the beautifier. What is the beautifier? The beautifier is CSS. Let's go to this Facebook and let's hack this Facebook as well. And this Facebook, the only hacking I'm going to do is to say that this is an image they are using here. I'll leave the image alone. But the text they are using here, I'm going to target the text here and I'm going to edit the text here. And I'll say that hello world, Facebook has been hacked. So when I'm done and this image, I can change it and put my own image there. This Facebook logo, I can change because I have the code here. I can edit this and say that instead of this image they are loading here, let's find any random image anywhere. Maybe Google. Let's find this image here, copy link address, and come here and use this as a source. Let's see if it will work. Okay. It didn't target the image itself. I'll still find the image. If I find the image itself, let me find any image. Let me find Google logo, any image. And this image, now I have a real image. So I'm going to copy the link of the image. And I'm going to provide it here and say that the IMG source should be this. You can see that HTML is HTML everywhere. This is too long. I didn't target the image well. Let me open the image well. Now that I've opened the image here, let me copy the link well. All right, so anytime I do this, somebody will ask, so is this going to affect the real, is this going to affect the real Facebook? Would they know that you have changed something? What image is this? Would they know that you have changed something? This image isn't correct. Oh, I can just remove their logo altogether. Let me find another image, any image at all. Maybe Google doesn't want to appear there. Let me use any image, any logo. Okay, my time is up, so I'm just wrapping up. All right. These images have two long links. Let's use this. Okay, I just want an image with a file name, simple one. All right, so enough of this. Let me say the last thing I want to say, and we will end the class. Now that I have access to the HTML of Facebook, actually, I can write any code I want. All these forms, instead of login, I have the HTML code here. I can say, don't log in. And I can alter anything with HTML. All right, someone will say that, does it mean you have hacked Facebook? Well, you have not really hacked Facebook. This is just for demonstration purposes. Instead of creating accounts, web developers have a way to view the code of any website. Okay. For example, the web page we have created, I can right click and go to page source. And page source will give me the code that made this page. You can see that this is the code we wrote. This is a code that made this page. Any website you see that you view the page source, you are going to see the code. Because it is showing in your browser, you have access to the code. When I started learning HTML, I was actually visiting websites, and any beautiful website I see, what I do is that I decide to check their code. So I go to page source, Then I'll see the code they use. So I'll be learning HTML from here. Well, today there are a lot of easier ways to learn HTML than what I did. Over here, you can see that they are using the script element here to write some JavaScript. The work we've done here is using CSS in HTML. And what we have done here has not hacked Facebook. I'm not there to hack Facebook. It is just the Facebook code that is opening on my machine. Because I have access to that code, I can use the inspect element here for developers, this inspect, and I have access to all the code from Facebook that is loading in my browser. So I can edit that code and put whatever I want. This does not mean that it has gone to their server and is showing to other people. This is only showing to me. So I can manipulate the HTML code I see here and change anything I want and write anything I want. All right. So where we see create account, I can say that don't create account. This don't create account is only happening on my page, nowhere else. The last thing I want to tell you is that your HTML, your CSS code can live within your, thank God, your CSS code can live within your HTML file, or you can create it as a separate CSS file. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut all the CSS that we have created, cut it, and create another file inside our work folder, in the CSS folder, and I'll call this file, see how I'm going to name this. I'll call it styles, and then the extension is not HTML, but CSS. And I say styles or CSS, I've created another file. This is how CSS files are saved in an extension called CSS. HTML is saved in an extension called HTML. JavaScript is saved in .js. So I can open this in Notepad again. And now this is a new file. I'll paste my CSS code here, the same code we wrote. And then I'll save, Control S. Then inside our HTML, I'm no longer going to use a style element to write my CSS code. I'm going to tell my HTML to link to my CSS using the link element here. And the rel here, I'm going to say the relation is now a style sheet. And the href is going to be my CSS file. Go to my CSS folder and open to the file called styles.css. The moment I save this, my page will work. Let me remove this, save it, and go and check my browser. When I refresh this, the website has become the same thing without CSS again. When I go back and I paste this, I have now created a link to a file called styles.css that contains all my CSS. So now when I refresh this, the CSS is going to come back. This is HTML and CSS. Your job is to create HTML and CSS file. And tomorrow we are going to put this online. This is a simple web page we have created. It's not yet online, it is offline. Create your own. Tomorrow you'll present it. Then we will put it online, we will publish it. And this beautiful page, we can keep working to make it more and more beautiful. And by the time we are done, you go like, wow, this is a website. All the links will be working, all the pages will be working. And we just created this in class. Isn't this wonderful? This is Introduction to HTML and CSS. We'll have a special class to learn these things well. But then, with what we have done here, we can easily put it online, and we will do some simple data migration as well tomorrow. Because of time, I'm going to end here. And tomorrow we will upload this online. Thank you very much, and I'm going to see you tomorrow.